This is RobDaWeeb. Today I'm going to talk about 5 anime with terrible animation but amazing stories. Animation is not the story. That sounds obvious, but the anime community acts like it's not. A show with beautiful animation and a mediocre plot gets praised constantly. A show with rough animation and an incredible story gets skipped. People literally won't watch something if the visuals don't meet a certain threshold. So I sat down and watched 5 anime specifically because they had terrible animation but supposedly amazing stories. And the results were honestly shocking. Not because the stories were bad, because they were so good that the animation genuinely stopped mattering. The first one was Madoka Magica. This is a show everyone talks about for the story, but honestly, the animation is rough. It's inconsistent. Some frames are clearly budget cuts. The action scenes aren't fluid. Character movements can feel stiff. If this show had typical anime-level animation, it would look generic, but watching it, the animation became invisible. Because the story was doing something that animation literally cannot compensate for, it was messing with expectations at a narrative level that made the viewer forget to care about frame quality. The first episode looks like a normal magical girl show, pretty standard stuff, nothing shocking. Then episode 3 happens and the entire genre gets flipped on its head, and from that moment forward, the animation doesn't matter. The viewer is emotionally invested in a story that's intentionally deconstructing its own genre. The animation could be stick figures and it wouldn't matter because the narrative has grabbed complete control of attention. This is the power of actual storytelling. It transcends technical limitations through sheer narrative force. Second was Steins. The animation is genuinely below average in most episodes. The backgrounds are sometimes static. The action sequences are minimal. Character animation can feel choppy. On paper, this sounds like it would be unwatchable. Instead, Steins became one of the most engaging anime experiences possible because the story builds tension through dialogue and character interaction, not through animation. Every scene matters. Every line advances the plot. Every character interaction deepens understanding of the mystery. The animation isn't even a factor because the viewer is mentally engaged in solving a time travel puzzle. Watching Steins Gate, something became clear. Animation only matters when the story isn't good enough to hold attention. If the narrative is compelling, people forget to judge technical quality. They're too busy thinking about what happens next. They're theorizing. They're analyzing dialogue. They're trying to predict plot developments. Animation becomes background noise. This realization was significant because it explains why so many shows with beautiful animation feel forgettable. The animation catches attention, but if the story isn't compelling, people realize that's all they have. Third was Ergo Proxy. This one's rough, like legitimately difficult to watch from a visual standpoint. The animation is sparse, long scenes without movement, backgrounds that don't change much, pacing that feels deliberately slow, but the world building and philosophical depth create this oppressive atmosphere that the animation actually enhances through limitation. The lack of visual stimulation forces attention onto the character interactions and existential questions being raised. The animation isn't bad here, it's purposefully minimalist, and that serves the story perfectly. Ergo Proxy taught another lesson. Sometimes bad animation is actually deliberate artistic choice. The show uses visual limitation as a storytelling tool. By refusing to give viewers spectacle, it forces them to engage with the text more deeply. By making the world look bleak and empty, it reinforces themes about isolation and meaning. The rough animation isn't a limitation, it's an intentional part of the artistic vision. That's different from animation being bad due to budget constraints. That's animation serving story in a specific way. Fourth was Natsume's Book of Friends. This one's interesting because the animation quality is inconsistent, but deliberately so. Action sequences are minimal. Character movement is economical, but the watercolor backgrounds are beautiful and the emotional beats are executed with incredible sensitivity. The animation matches the story's tone perfectly. It's a quiet, contemplative show about connection and loneliness. Elaborate action animation would actively harm that tone. The simple character designs and limited animation actually create space for the emotional core to breathe. Watching Natsume's Book of Friends, the animation limitations became assets. A character's expression carries more weight when the animation is restrained. A moment of connection feels more significant when the visual spectacle isn't distracting. The show proves that animation quality and storytelling quality aren't inherently connected. A show can have minimal animation and maximum emotional impact. It just requires confident storytelling that doesn't rely on spectacle to maintain viewer engagement. Fifth was Mob Psycho 100. This one's a wild case because the animation is intentionally janky. It's deliberately weird. The style is inconsistent. Characters move in unusual ways. The visual presentation is almost aggressively non-traditional. But the story about a middle school kid with psychic powers trying to live a normal life is so genuine and heartfelt that the weird animation becomes part of the charm. The unconventional visuals match the show's unconventional approach to storytelling. The animation isn't trying to be beautiful, it's trying to be honest, and somehow that's more effective than technical perfection. Mob Psycho 100 demonstrated something important. Animation style matters more than animation quality. A show can have rough, awkward animation if that animation is serving the story intentionally. The weirdness becomes personality. The lack of polish becomes authenticity. The show's willingness to look different from standard anime actually makes it memorable. Technical perfection would make it forgettable. Authentic imperfection makes it remarkable. After watching all five, the pattern became undeniable. Story beats animation every single time. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every single time. A viewer will sit through poor animation if the narrative is compelling enough. They'll forget the animation is bad. They'll recommend the show despite the animation. They'll argue that animation doesn't matter when discussing why it's good. The story absorbs all the viewer's attention and emotional investment, leaving no capacity to judge visual quality critically. This creates an uncomfortable reality for the anime industry. Beautiful animation is being wasted on shows with mediocre stories. Incredible animation teams are working on projects that don't deserve their talent. Meanwhile, shows with genuinely moving narratives struggle to get funding and attention because animation budgets are limited. The industry has inverted priorities. Visual spectacle has become the metric of quality when narrative substance is what actually creates lasting impact. The 5 shows I watched will stay with me. Madoka Magica's genre deconstruction, Steins Gate's time travel puzzle, Ergo Proxy's existential philosophy, Natsume's emotional connection, Mob Psycho's genuine heart. None of those memories involve animation quality. All of them involve story moments that hit emotionally and intellectually. If I watch 5 anime with beautiful animation but terrible stories, I'd remember the visuals and forget the narrative within weeks. But these 5, these stick because the stories are good enough to transcend the animation limitations. The practical takeaway is simple. Don't skip anime because of animation quality. If the story premise interests you, give it a chance. Subscribe for more analysis of what actually makes anime work beyond the technical metrics everyone fixates on.